Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take your sources, distill the essential information, and give you the knowledge you need without all the historical stuff.
And today, we're on a pretty massive intellectual journey.
We're going back 70,000 years to tackle, well, maybe the most fundamental question of human history. How did Homo sapiens become, well, us?
It's the ultimate evolutionary cold case, really. You have to remember, for the vast majority of our time on this planet, the first 150,000 years of Homo sapiens' existence, we just weren't that special.
Right. We looked like modern people. We had these big developed brains.
Exactly. But we had no definitive marked advantage over the other archaic human species out there, especially not over the Neanderthals.
And that's the historical puzzle we're trying to solve. For millennia, we were just another primate, scuffling along, and then, boom, suddenly a seismic shift happens.
It's around 70,000 years ago, and we just launch ourselves onto the global stage. We drive every other human lineage to extinction and completely restructure the planet.
So our mission today is to dig into what scholars call the cognitive revolution.
Precisely. It's this critical compressed window of time, let's say roughly 70,000 to 30,000 years ago, where the internal structure of sapiens' minds and the very nature of our communication just evolved dramatically.
This is the moment history decouples from biology.
That's the inflection point. It's where our accumulated stories, our innovations, our institutions, it's where all that breaks away from the slow, grinding pace of biological evolution.
Okay, so to get how big of a leap this was, we need to understand just how unimpressive we were before it. What was the embarrassing status quo, as our sources put it?
Well, we were far from world beaters. The sources really emphasized this one big historical failure that happened about 100,000 years ago.
This was the first migration out of Africa.
The first major attempt, yes. A wave of early Homo sapiens moved into the Levant, which is sort of the gateway to Eurasia. But that territory was already occupied.
By Neanderthals.
By Neanderthals, who are, generally better adapted to cold climates, physically stronger.
And what happened? Did we coexist?
No, not at all. The sapiens failed. Utterly. They just couldn't secure a permanent dominant foothold.
So they just left.
They retreated back into the Arabian Peninsula, and they left the Neanderthals as the undisputed masters of the Middle East for another 50,000 years.
Wow. That failure is incredibly telling.
It is. It suggests that while those early sapiens had the body, the brain size of modern humans, they just lacked the crucial cognitive software. They couldn't organize or strategize or adapt on the scale they needed to compete.
So the idea is that the internal wiring of their brains was just fundamentally limited. We're talking basic constraints on memory or communication or...
That's the consensus. Imagine trying to explain a complex idea, like, say, democracy, to an archaic sapiens from 100,000 years ago.
It would be impossible.
It would be a complete failure of communication, of conceptual understanding. Conversely, we would struggle to grasp the limitations of their own thought processes.
But then, around 70,000 years ago, a switch just flips. What's the evidence for this sudden change in capability?
The change is dramatic and it's fast. This is the beginning of the second, and this time successful, wave of migration out of Africa. And this new generation of sapiens, they don't just compete, they sweep the globe.
They just overrun everything.
They rapidly populate East Asia, Europe, pushing the Neanderthals back until they vanish completely. But the most compelling evidence of this new cognitive ability is their seafaring.
Let's talk about the crossing to Australia.
Yeah.
That just seems like an almost impossible feat for what we think of as a primitive species.
It's proof of a whole new level of intelligence and cooperation. Around 45,000 years ago, sapiens crossed the open ocean to reach Australia. And this wasn't just a short hop across a channel.
No, this was serious.
It required building boats, coordinating dozens of people, and this is the critical part, using navigation skills sophisticated enough to survive a long journey with no land in sight. It was a continent completely untouched by any humans until that point.
You just don't do that.
You just don't accomplish that without a deep revolutionary change in how you think, how you plan, and how you execute strategy across large, flexible groups of people.
That transition is just staggering.
Yeah.
From being kicked out of the Levant to conquering an entire continent. So let's look closer at the material record. That period from 70,000 to 30,000 years ago, what concrete things did they make that prove this revolution actually happened?
The evidence moves way beyond just simple adaptation. It shows genuine, large-scale innovation and long-term abstract thinking. It's basically an invention spree.
Okay, like what?
We see the bow and arrow, which is an application of stored energy in physics that's far beyond just, thrusting a spear.
Right.
We see the oil lamp. That requires knowing how to refine and sustain a reliable, controllable flame. It extends the day. It facilitates indoor social life. And then there's the needle.
The needle seems so simple, but it's huge.
It is often overlooked, but the invention of the needle implies sewing. And sewing is absolutely essential for creating warm, fitted, layered clothing. You need that to survive in frigid European climates. It's a complete systems upgrade.
That's a great point. It's not just about the single piece of tech. It's the ability to conceptualize an entire solution, a fitted coat, a sustained light source, and then engineer all the little parts needed to make that system work.
Exactly. And the abstract thought leaps even further. This era gives us the first clear evidence of institutions we'd recognize today.
Like commerce, social hierarchies.
Complex commerce, social stratification, and formalized religion. These are things that do not exist physically, but require shared belief and ritual to function.
So if we had to pick one single artifact that just perfectly encapsulates this new power of imagination,
it
would have to be the Stela Lion Man.
The Lion Man figurine, yes.
Huh?
It's carved from mammoth ivory. It's about 32,000 years old, found in the Stadel Cave in Germany. And it's a remarkable piece of art. A clearly human body with a distinct carved leonine head.
And the sources stress this is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, indisputable examples of art and probably religion.
That's right.
I want to focus on why this specific hybrid creature is such a bombshell piece of evidence. I mean, why doesn't a carving of just a lion or just a man prove the same thing?
Because a simple lion carving, while it requires skill, is just a representation of objective reality. It's something you can see. The Lion Man is proof of the ability to imagine things that do not and cannot and never did exist in the real world.
It's pure imagination made physical.
It proves the ability to fuse completely separate concepts, humanity and lionhood, into a new mythical entity. And that process, this capacity for fantasy and shared fiction, is the absolute bedrock of modern human culture.
So the person carving it and the whole community, they had to share this complex mental space where this creature was real and had meaning.
Yes, and that meaning was almost certainly religious or mythological.
Okay, so we've got the material accomplishments, the boats, the arrows, the needles, and the abstract ones, like religion and commerce. Let's pivot to the core mechanism. If this revolution happened, what do scholars think was the actual trigger?
Well, the prevailing theory is that this sudden massive leap wasn't the product of, slow, gradual environmental pressure over millennia. It was likely an unprecedented chance event in our genome.
A mutation.
An accidental genetic mutation, the sources call it the tree of knowledge mutation, that literally changed the inner wiring and physical structure of sapiens' brains. It was a hardware upgrade that finally unlocked our full capacity for communication and complex thought.
So if we were already physically Homo sapiens with big brains, this mutation must have been pretty subtle, maybe affecting brain connectivity or specific regions for language.
Exactly. It wasn't about size. It was about efficiency and function. Think of it less like installing a bigger engine and more like installing an entirely new operating system on the same computer hardware. It allowed for complex pattern recognition, memory indexing, and most importantly, the development of a completely new kind of language.
Let me push back on that for a second. If Neanderthals also had large brains and we lived alongside them for so long, why was this critical genetic lottery? Why did it only happen in sapiens' DNA?
Well, that's precisely what makes it a matter of chance. Evolution doesn't operate on fairness or necessity. It's a random process. The sources emphasize that, as far as we can tell, this genetic lottery just happened to favor a sapiens population, maybe a small group in East Africa, over the Neanderthals in Europe.
So if it had happened in a Neanderthal?
The course of history would be entirely different, but because it happened in sapiens, it provided that essential, final biological piece that allowed us to unleash the power of culture, which ultimately enabled us to win the competition for resources.
And this new language is the key. But as you said, communication isn't new, so we have to get really specific about what makes sapiens' language so revolutionary.
We absolutely do. I mean, language is just a system for conveying information. It wasn't the first language. Insects use complex dances to show where food is. It wasn't even the first vocal language. Apes, monkeys, whales, elephants, they all have sophisticated vocal language.
Right, like the green monkey calls. That's a good baseline for what non-sapiens language can do.
A perfect baseline. Green monkeys use distinct vocalizations that are almost like single words. One call means careful, an eagle is overhead. And a slightly different lower call means careful, a lion is nearby.
And the responses are specific. Look out for the eagle, climb a tree for the lion.
It's an advanced system of warning and instruction for sure.
But, and this is the key, that system is fixed. A monkey can't combine the eagle call and the lion call to say the eagle is watching the lion hunt near the river.
Exactly. And that limitation brings us to the two main theories about what our new sapiens language truly achieved. They aren't mutually exclusive, but they do emphasize different functions.
Okay, let's start with Theory A, supple and detailed information sharing. What's the core idea?
The argument is all about capacity and versatility. Sapiens language lets us combine a limited number of basic sounds, vowels and consonants, into a practically infinite number of sentences, each with a distinct meaning. This gives us this unprecedented capacity to ingest, store, and communicate a massive amount of specific, detailed information about the world.
So it's a difference between just a simple reactive alarm and proactive strategic planning.
That's the strategic leap. The monkey yells, "lion," and it triggers an immediate fixed reaction. A modern human, however, can provide rich contextual detail. This morning I saw a lioness, she's limping a little, and she's hiding behind the big willow tree near the river bend where the bison usually drink around noon.
And that level of detail allows the whole group to have a complex strategic discussion.
A discussion about hypotheticals. Should we track her now? Is the bison herd worth the risk? Can we send 2 hunters to distract her while the rest go for the bison? This capacity for discussing complex what-if scenarios and coordinating action is what lets sapiens out-hunt and out-strategize every other species.
That seems like a pretty complete explanation for why sapiens took over. Superior hunting, better survival strategy. So why do scholars even need a Theory B, the one that focuses on gossip?
Because the environment is only half the battle. The other, and arguably more important, challenge for sapiens was social cohesion. Theory B, the power of gossip, argues that the most critical information conveyed by our new language wasn't about lions or bison, it was about us, about other humans.
We are, at our core, social animals.
We are fundamentally social, cooperative animals, and our success depends entirely on managing the complexities of our own community.
So why does the group need to know all the intimate details of everyone else's lives?
Because cooperation, especially when your life is on the line, relies on trust. And trust requires constant calibration based on reliable social information. It's absolutely essential to know who in your band has a hidden agenda, who is sleeping with whom and might form a dangerous alliance, who is reliable, who is honest, and most importantly, who is a cheat.
And the amount of sheer data you'd need to track all of that, even in a small group, must be astronomical.
It's staggering. In a band of just 50 people, you have 12,225 one-on-one relationships to monitor, plus all the smaller shifting coalitions and feuds and favors. If you have a limited vocabulary like a green monkey, keeping track of that dynamic social landscape is impossible.
But our new language?
Our new language, specifically our ability to spend hours gossiping and sharing intricate stories about other people, allowed us to maintain a tightly bonded, incredibly sophisticated social structure.
So if we buy the gossip theory, we're essentially saying that social cohesion and the ability to spot a freeloader was the first killer app of human language, not just hunting prowess.
That's the core insight, yes. Reliable social information, which we often dismiss as trivial or malicious, allowed small sapiens bands to expand into larger, more cohesive groups than any other primate could ever manage. They could coordinate because their language let them quickly update their social files on everyone.
And if you look at modern communication, the sources suggest gossip still dominates. It's a powerful link back to our evolutionary roots.
It's an undeniable pattern. Just think about what takes up most of your time online. Emails, social media, political discussions, news. A huge proportion of that is focused on social dynamics, especially perceived wrongdoings.
The CEO who committed fraud, the politician who broke a promise.
The quarreling neighbors, the scandalous affair, it's all gossip.
So the person sharing a juicy rumor about their manager isn't just being malicious. They're playing a vital social role.
The gossip theory suggests they are. Rumor mongers are, in effect, the original Fourth Estate. They're the journalists, the investigators, informing society about potential dangers, protecting the group from cheats, and making sure the social contracts that allow cooperation are upheld.
They police the moral boundaries.
Which is crucial for maintaining trust as the group gets bigger. It's highly probable that both theories are correct. Sapiens language evolved to communicate both detailed objective strategy and complex subjective social dynamics at the same time.
Okay, so this combination of strategy and gossip allowed sapiens groups to become more sophisticated. But there are still biological limits on group size, even with the best gossip network.
Let's look at the upper limit of cooperation when it's based only on intimate personal knowledge.
The constraints are incredibly rigid, and we see them in our closest relatives. Chimpanzees, for example, rely entirely on close personal intimacy to form stable coalitions. The alpha male rarely wins just through brute strength. He maintains his power by leading a large, loyal coalition of supporters.
And those relationships take a ton of work to maintain. A huge investment. Daily hugging, touching, grooming, a constant exchange of favors. If two chimps have never met, never groomed, they simply cannot know if they can trust each other when a crisis hits.
And that dependence on intense personal friendship just limits the total possible size of the group.
Absolutely. Zoologists find that a typical chimp troop generally destabilizes and breaks down once it gets near 50 individuals. The social demands just become too high. Groups larger than 100 are extremely rare in the wild.
And archaic sapiens before the revolution were likely governed by these same instincts.
They were, adapted only for small, intimate groups. So even if a fertile valley could feed 500 of them, they wouldn't form a cohesive tribe. They'd splinter into small, feuding groups because they couldn't possibly track the trustworthiness of 500 people.
Our new language helped us stretch those instincts. But even we hit a ceiling. There's a magic number, right?
Yeah. There is. The critical threshold is approximately 150 individuals. Sociological research across all sorts of groups, from small villages to modern offices, shows that 150 is the maximum natural size of a group bonded purely by intimate acquaintance and the flow of gossip. You might hear it called Dunbar's number.
And you see this boundary in organizations today.
It's a recurring crisis point. Below 150, say, a small company or a military platoon order can be maintained informally. People know each other's reputations. You don't necessarily need rigid hierarchies, formal ranks, or written laws. Peer pressure is enough.
But once you cross that line,
things break down. You have to fundamentally restructure. You have to introduce formal ranks, HR departments, CEOs, simply because personal knowledge is no longer a viable foundation for trust.
So if 150 is the natural limit for trust based on acquaintance, how did we ever overcome that barrier to form cities of thousands and empires of millions?
And this is the core legacy of the cognitive revolution. The secret was the appearance of fiction. Large numbers of strangers can cooperate successfully only if they all genuinely believe in a common story, a common myth. What the sources call an imagined reality.
This is the real point of difference between us and everything else. We are moving completely out of objective reality into a space created purely by the mind. The ability to talk about things that don't physically exist. Gods, nations, human rights, corporations.
The moment sapiens acquired this ability, the world changed forever. Before, they could only say, watch out, there's a lion. Now they could say, the lion is the great spirit of our tribe, and he demands we share our meat equally. Legends, myths, religions were born.
And this collective imagination becomes the mythical glue that binds vast numbers of strangers together.
In a flexible, adaptable way. That's the key. Other animals can cooperate in huge numbers, but only rigidly, like ants or bees, and usually only with close relatives. Chimps cooperate flexibly, but only in small groups. Sapiens achieved the unique combination, flexible cooperation with countless numbers of absolute strangers. That, more than any tool, is why we rule the world.
Let's ground this. Give us some concrete examples of how these modern myths underpin large-scale cooperation.
Okay, think about the global economy. A farmer in India and a software developer in Silicon Valley can do business because they both believe in the US dollar, which is fundamentally a collective myth backed by the story of the US government.
Right.
Or religion. Two unknown Catholics meet for the first time. They might pool their money to build a hospital because they both believe in the story of a crucified God. Two lawyers who have never met will defend a total stranger because they both believe in the abstract concepts of justice and human rights. None of these things exist outside our shared stories.
It's easy to look back at, primitive societies believing in river spirits and feel superior. But the sources argue our modern world functions on the exact same basis.
The terminology has changed, but the mechanism is identical. Modern business people, bankers, lawyers, they are, in a sense, powerful sorcerers. They perform rituals, they tell specific stories with complex jargon, and millions of people act as if those stories are real, immutable facts.
To make this concrete, let's dive into the legend of Peugeot, the car maker. It's a perfect modern example of this collective fiction at work.
Peugeot is massive. It employs 200,000 strangers who cooperate effectively all over the globe, making millions of cars. The question is, in what objective sense does Peugeot SA actually
You
exist?
can't point to it. I mean, you can see a factory, you see workers, you see cars, but you don't see the company.
Precisely. If every Peugeot car in the world were destroyed tomorrow, the company would still exist. It could raise money and design new ones. If every single employee was fired, the legal entity known as Peugeot SA would remain intact until a judge formally dissolved it. Its existence is completely independent of its physical parts.
And this brings us to what the sources call one of humanity's most ingenious inventions, the limited liability company. It's fiction codified into law.
It was a game changer. It solved the problem of catastrophic risk that held back entrepreneurs for millennia. I mean, think about a 13th century wagon maker named Jean. If Jean started a business, Jean was the business.
His personal assets were on the line.
Completely. If he couldn't repay a loan, his creditors could take his house, his land, his cow, even enslave his children to cover the debt. That absolute liability created a paralyzing fear that just throttled enterprise.
So the limited liability company, the LLC, solved this by creating a legal person, a corporate entity that's entirely separate from the humans who founded it.
Yes. When Armand Peugeot set up his company in 1896, the key benefit was protection. If a car malfunctioned, the buyer could sue Peugeot, the company. If the company went bankrupt, Armand Peugeot, the man, was personally safe. He didn't owe a single franc of the company's debts.
And that unlocked a flood of investment.
An incredible flood of investment and enterprise. It allowed projects to scale way beyond the risk tolerance of any one person. Armand Peugeot, the man, died in 1915, but Peugeot, the corporate entity, is still alive today.
This sounds exactly like a religious ritual. How did Armand Peugeot, the man, create Peugeot, the legal fiction?
It is entirely a ritual, based on shared belief. It's exactly like the ritual a Catholic priest performs every Sunday. The priest follows the liturgy, says the specific words, Hoc est corpus meum, this is my body. And through that shared ritual, millions of believers accept that the bread becomes the body of Christ.
And the modern lawyer is the high priest.
Precisely. The core text, in this case, is the French Legal Code, which was created by Parliament, a collective body millions believe has the authority to declare reality. The legislator, acting as the high sorcerer, declared that if a lawyer follows the proper liturgy, writing the required spells on the right paper, stamping it, signing it, then, hocus pocus, a new legal person, Peugeot SA, is incorporated. And millions of French citizens just behave as if that corporate entity truly exists.
That's profound. It means we are all living simultaneously in two different worlds.
We inhabit a dual reality. There's the objective reality of trees and rivers and lions, and then there's the imagined reality of gods, nations, money, justice, and corporations. And what's chilling is that today, the survival of the objective world, our forests, our oceans, often depends entirely on the decisions and the grace of these imagined entities.
And the ability to create and change these imagined realities is what makes Sapiens so versatile. Because our cooperation is based on these myths, we can just change the story, and our entire society changes instantly.
This is the essential consequence of it all. It opened the fast lane of cultural evolution, which completely bypasses the slow, glacial traffic jam of genetic evolution. Take the French Revolution in 1789. The French population switched in a matter of years from believing in the divine right of kings to believing in the sovereignty of the people. No change in DNA was required. They just adopted a new national story.
And if you contrast that with other social species, their behavior is just rigidly fixed by their genes.
DNA is a powerful conservative force. It dictates the social behavior of nearly every other species. I mean, a group of female chimpanzees can't just stage a feminist revolution, hold a vote, and abolish the alpha male system. To do that, they would need actual changes in their DNA over countless generations.
We see that same rigidity in our archaic human ancestors, too.
Look at Homo erectus. Their basic stone tool technology remained largely unchanged for almost 2 million years. Any changes in their technology or social patterns were driven by extremely slow genetic mutations or major environmental shifts. They were stuck on the biological slow lane.
But Sapiens broke free. We can transform our entire social structures, our economies, our relationships in less than a decade with the exact same genetic code.
The adaptability is just staggering. Think of a Berlin resident born in 1900. By the time she was 70, she would have lived under 5 fundamentally different socio-political systems. The Hohenzollern Empire, the Weimar Republic, the Nazi Third Reich, Communist East Germany, and maybe even seen the start of a reunified democratic Germany. She lived through 5 different realities, yet her DNA never changed.
And you can see this cultural independence even in elites whose existence seems to go against natural selection.
The existence of childless elites is a perfect example of culture overriding genes. Natural selection says high-status individuals should maximize procreation, yet we have the Catholic priesthood, Buddhist monasteries, Chinese eunuch bureaucracies. These are powerful elites who voluntarily give up procreation. The chimpanzee alpha male uses his power to have hundreds of young. The Catholic alpha male, the Pope, abstains completely. He doesn't pass on a celibacy gene. He passes on canon law and religious stories.
And this versatility, this ability to rapidly change social organization, that must have been the deciding factor in the conflict with the Neanderthals.
It was the ultimate victory of flexibility over static strength. Neanderthals might have been individually stronger, maybe better adapted to the cold, but in a conflict, 50 Neanderthals, using their traditional methods, were no match for 500 versatile, innovative sapiens. If the sapiens lost a battle, they could instantly invent a new religious story, a new tactical doctrine, a new way of organizing to overcome the challenge.
And you see this in their practical hunting techniques.
Neanderthals typically hunted alone or in small groups. Sapiens, though, developed sophisticated mass cooperation hunting. They could surround entire herds of wild horses, coordinating hundreds of people to drive them into narrow gorges for a mass slaughter. They could harvest tons of meat in a single day, sustaining far larger bands.
This shared network of knowledge also gave sapiens a trade advantage.
Absolutely. Trade requires cooperation with strangers, and that requires fictional trust. Trust in a shared god, trust in the value of the currency. Archaeologists find seashells from the Mediterranean coast 30,000 years ago, deep in the European interior. Obsidian was traded across 400 kilometers of open water between Pacific islands.
And trade is basically just sharing resources and knowledge across a huge network.
Yes, and that shared belief in the value of the transaction was the foundation. Neanderthals, lacking this mechanism for fictional trust, show very little evidence of trade. They made their tools from local materials. This severely limited their knowledge network. The Sapiens network, based on trade and stories, was denser, wider, and constantly adapting. It guaranteed their dominance.
So if we pull this all together, the real fundamental difference between Homo sapiens and every other hominid isn't just a bigger individual brain. It's the mythical glue, that shared imaginative reality that binds vast, flexible numbers of individuals together.
That flexible, large-scale cooperation is the ultimate advantage. To illustrate it, the sources offer this great comparison. Think about a simple flint spearhead made 70,000 years ago versus a modern nuclear warhead.
The difference in physical complexity is immense, of course, but the difference in the required cooperation is the real story here.
That flint spearhead required the knowledge and cooperation of maybe one craftsman and a few close friends. The design was static for generations. A modern nuclear warhead, on the other hand, requires a staggering level of cooperation. Millions of strangers globally cooperating based on shared fictional entities.
From the miners digging up uranium
To the theoretical physicists writing complex formulas, all united under the fiction of a nation-state and the financial fiction of a national budget. The leap in our tool-making capacity on an individual level is negligible. The true monumental leap has been entirely in our capacity to cooperate flexibly with massive numbers of strangers.
And we are left with this stunning realization that the sapiens who carved the Stadal Lion Man 30,000 years ago, who started us down this cultural fast lane, had the exact same physical, emotional, and intellectual hardware that we have today.
And that fact leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to consider. We are still defined by this duality. Objective reality and imagined reality. Look closely at your own life. To what extent is your daily behavior governed by objective reality versus these powerful, all-encompassing imagined realities?
What stories are you believing in?
Think about the deepest convictions that define you. The value of the money in your bank, the political ideology that guides your decisions, the corporate identity of your career, or the religious identity you hold dear. All of these powerful forces are collective fictions, created by words and maintained by ritual, and their survival often dictates the objective, physical choices you make every single day.
It's a powerful challenge to our own perceptions of what is real. We'll be back soon to continue diving into the foundational stories that shape our world.